is Sakshi and this is Alejandro, and behind the camera we have Naman, our third team member. We're team number 152. Today we're showcasing our ENG006 final project, which we choose to do on a popular card game called Bluff. The rules of the game go as such. Each of the players is given a random selection of 26 cards each, and player 1 has to put down 4 cards, which he can either claim to be the same cards as he has put down, or a random selection of 4. Moving forward, player 2 has the opportunity to either call the bluff or pass and move on with the game. In the case that he calls the bluff and the bluff is true, the 4 cards are moved back into its player 1's original deck, or if the bluff is false, the 4 cards are moved into player 2's deck. The game ends when either player 1 or player 2 run out of all of their cards, and the player with 0 cards wins. So we have the start screen here. So if we could just, so we see 3. This was part of my responsibility to design. We have the start button here, which would move us to the shuffler screen. The exit button, which exits the game, and the instructions button that displays a dialog box with the instructions of the game. Here we can press OK and move on. So when we press start, we move to the shuffler screen, which was Naman's responsibility.
Yeah. So I designed this GUI to shuffle the cards, the full deck of 52 cards, into 2 separate decks. So now you see when I click shuffle, it makes the sound, which was Sakshi's responsibility, and then pulls up the drop down menu, and it also has assigned 26 cards to each of the players, as you can see in the workspace. So now the second GUI was also my responsibility, the drop down menus, where each of these drop down menus on the left show the cards that the player has. So if I select one of these cards, say Hearts of Queen, it gets assigned over here as number 12 because that's the integer value. And similarly, when I select any Spades 9 and Hearts Queen, no wait, what was it? Clubs 5 and let's say Ace of Diamonds, that's the cards I'm actually putting down, and they've got assigned over here. Now I can also choose to put down the same cards as my claim, in which case I wouldn't be bluffing, or I could put them differently, which I'm going to do right now to just see how that works. So I'm going to choose Hearts 3, Hearts, Ace, and Hearts 6, and Hearts King. So now when I hit switch player, it'll move on to the next GUI, which was designed by Alex, and he will explain what happens then.
Alright, so now in this P2 call pass function, we're given the 4 cards that are claimed, and it's my cards over here on the right side, those are the cards that player 2 owns in their deck, and they could either choose to pass, which would move on to the next drop down menu screen, or they could call. So essentially, once they call, Sakshi could go into how they would actually display the new cards and evaluate whether or not the called cards work, or if the bluff was called correctly or not.
So here, a part of my responsibility was also to assign the string values for the cards with the images. So here, as Alex said, we have the claimed cards, and if we call the function, call the bluff, we see that on the bottom row we had the images for the actual cards that player 1 had, and the sound.
So it essentially works by taking those 2 strings of the different array values and comparing them. If they're equal, then it would call the bluff. It would call the bluff incorrectly, and if they weren't equal, the call would be correct, and then it would trigger an audio cue based on that.
And here, since the bluff was called correctly, P1's deck now has 26 cards again, which the cards were basically just given back to the P1 deck. If the bluff was called incorrectly, the card would have gone to P2 deck, and the P2 deck would have 30 values instead of 26.
So now we're going to display one of that situation. So if P2 would claim to have H1, H5, H9, and D3, and they would claim that they have Hearts 1, Hearts 5, Hearts 9, and Diamonds 3. We could then switch players. So these would be the claim for player 2, and player 1 can either call or pass. Passing them would save these to the table deck, while calling them would call
not a bluff.
would call the bluff correctly or incorrectly, and the cards would return to the player 1 deck. So now the player 1 deck has a 1/30 cell, while player 2 deck only has 1/22 cell, and that shows how the cell values can change, and eventually once one of them becomes a 1/0 cell, that will determine whether or not there is a winner.
Alright, so I think one of the biggest challenges we faced while writing the program was assigning the drop-down menus, because we had to make sure that the drop-down menus for a particular player only showed his deck of cards and not the entire 52. So that was hard to assign, and after that, indexing each of the cards to give a specific value in the workspace for manipulation later, because we had strings in the drop down but we wanted integer values in the workspace. So indexing that was a little bit difficult. And then I think another one we had was consistency with the strings and corresponding integers, because the strings had to be in the same order in every GUI consistently, because otherwise it would cause a mismatch between the integers and the strings, which would result in inaccurate calculation of the cards, the card matching. Right. Yep. Go on.
And as for the call pass buttons, we ran into a couple issues displaying the images, because we wanted to allow the player to have a default blank option if they only wanted to play 2 cards or 3 cards. We didn't want that to be its own card, so we had to concatenate that into a string in order to actually have that as an available option in the drop-down menu. And then we needed to do a switch case in order to
Display that, the none thing.
So right here is the none value. So if the player just selected none, as such, they could then claim to put none there, and then whatever other card they wanted to claim. So in order to create blank images such as these, it was difficult without creating a none card that would then get shuffled. So that was the main source of difficulty with assigning blank cards.
Also the switch case we had to create.
And we also had to create the switch case in order to actually display the images without running into errors of having empty cells in our array. Another difficulty we had was in evaluating the winner, since we wanted to calculate for a winner after every round, after a call or a pass button was clicked, and we wanted that to relate to a pop-up. So that was difficult in creating the loop that would evaluate the string amounts. And finally, our last issue with the call pass was with generally the entire program was the GUI in total. Since they are separate windows, they require the path information for each of the files of the M files. So it's going to be hard to run this on a different computer, because the run function only works with the path that is on this computer right now. So that information would have to be updated for whatever other computer that is being used.
That computer, yeah.
Other than that, the program now runs smoothly, and it evaluates winners after it detects a 0 by 1 cell for the winner.
Yeah, thank you.